Welcome back to another volume of truly disturbing tales from Reddit. Today we're going to be narrating 3 new unsettling stories taken directly from the platform. I encourage you all to sit back, grab a snack, and enjoy these terrifying personal accounts. Now, without any further delay, let's jump right in. I've been lurking on the sub for quite a while and enjoy hearing other people's experiences. While perusing, I recalled a story from my own childhood that I had mostly forgotten. Here it is. My parents divorced when I was 4, maybe 5 years old. During and after the divorce, my brother, who we'll call Chris, my mom and I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment townhouse. Now, this was not a nice townhouse that you might be imagining. It wasn't a complete shithole per se, but it was older and in a rougher part of town. Something that a single mother with 2 kids could swing. The layout of the apartment is important to the story, so bear with me here. When you walk in the front door, the kitchen is immediately to your left, and there's a short entrance hallway right in front of you. The kitchen has an open countertop area that looks into a dining spot for a table, and a split-level living room/den area that also had glass sliding doors leading out to the backyard, where there was a rather sad and sparse playground. In the hallway entrance again, on the right is a staircase leading up to my mom's and my brother's rooms. One day after school, my brother and I are out playing in the backyard on the playground, doing our kid stuff, when my mom told us she wanted to go check the mail. The mailboxes for the apartments are located at the front entrance, which is on the opposite side of the complex from us. Naturally, me being 5 and Chris being 9, my mom didn't want to leave us alone, especially since it was just about dark outside. We came inside and got ready to go check the mail together. On the way out, I remember my mom asking Chris if he had closed and locked the back sliding glass door. Chris affirmed that he had. Cut to, we're coming back from the mailroom. It's maybe been 20, 30 minutes max. It's hard to recall fully, but my mom unlocks the apartment door. I'm lingering in the car for some reason or another. Chris hadn't realized that I wasn't in the apartment yet, and on the stairs leading to the bedrooms on the right, he sees someone's feet disappear at the top of the landing, as if someone were scampering off to hide. Thinking that they were my feet, he doesn't think that there's anything off about the situation. Chris heads to the kitchen, and I actually make my way inside and head upstairs directly into our bedroom so that I could get ready for my nighttime bath routine. My mom is at the table in the dining area near the split-level living area downstairs. While I'm completely clueless getting ready for bed in the bathroom, Chris from downstairs keeps hearing someone walking around in my mom's room. Now, I had a bad habit when I was this age of going through people's stuff. Not maliciously. I was just 5, so call it curiosity. So Chris, thinking that I'm being a nosy bastard going through all my mom's jewelry and other things, runs upstairs to catch me in the act, making an effort to get me in trouble. Chris runs up the stairs, sprints across the hall to my mom's bedroom, and throws himself stomach first onto the bed. When he looks up, he doesn't see me. He sees a tall, slender man with a bright green goblin latex Halloween mask on. This man is also holding a large knife that he swiped from our kitchen. My brother sits silently in shock as the man in the mask raises a single finger to his mouth, indicating Chris to be quiet. And in absolute true form of my brother, he screamed bloody murder for our mother. Now, I've heard things going on, but I have no idea and am not aware of what's happening. I've gotten into my big, oversized sleep shirt, and am heading downstairs to have a glass of milk before bed. When Chris screamed, the man ran downstairs and encountered my mom, who immediately jumped into action. Our baseball gear was in the living room, and my mom instinctively grabbed a bat and started fighting this man in our house, while he all the while is taking swipes at her with her own knife. I first noticed what's happening when I've come downstairs to the kitchen. I pulled up a step stool to reach the counter and to pour that glass of milk. that's when I see over the bar the guy push my mom off the steps into the living room, where she lands flat on her back. She starts swinging the bat wildly, trying to make any contact she can with it. And boy does she. She makes direct contact with this guy's knee, and I can still hear the aluminum thud of the bat into bone. I'm absolutely glued to this image, frozen in place. Not scared, just so young that I couldn't fully process what I was seeing. After taking the blow with the bat, it seems like this guy has lost all will to fight with my mom. He runs towards the front door, which is right by the kitchen. I'm now mid-pour of my glass of milk, still frozen, milk continuing to spill out all over the counter and floor. Before he exits, he stops and turns directly towards me, and in that green goblin mask with the knife, screams a primal, deep sound of rage, paired with frustration. And as he ran out, he slammed the door so hard that it seemed like our whole place shook. I continued standing on my stool, pouring milk everywhere, frozen for I don't know how long. Could have been only a second, but it felt much longer than that. I don't remember what happened afterwards, but all of the parts I've relayed are very clear to me. It became obvious to us that that man had made his way in through that backsliding door, the one that Chris claimed to have locked, but in actuality, most likely he didn't. The moral of this whole story is to lock your doors and to not just assume you did. And while this story happened over 20 years ago, I have to say, man in the goblin mask, let's never meet again. I've lived my entire life in a very rural area in Tennessee, and this happened either the summer of 1992 or 1993. At the time, I was a preteen. I can still see this in my mind, almost as if it happened yesterday. Like I said before, a rural area in Tennessee where we used to have some serious issues with people dumping unwanted, worn-out items and garbage down our beautiful hillsides and ravines. At that time, it was common to find illegal dumping sites everywhere because there was no bulk pickup offered by our one waste disposal monopoly. In this part of the state, the economic disparity is obvious. You have some of the poorest people imagine, coupled with some folks that own multiple mansions and vacation homes. My family fell somewhere in the upper middle class. To relate it to the movie Titanic, which was one of my favorite films of all time, we would be either the lowest rung of first class or the very top of second class. Unfortunately, the majority of our neighbors and community would be in steerage or the coal bunker. Well, it was August here in Tennessee, aka sun-scorching heat and enough humidity to make it slightly uncomfortable to even breathe. Many describe it as the swamp capital of the state. Anyway, we had just had an extraordinarily rare murder in our county. It was all that anyone was talking about. All you could hear in our churches, grocery stores, and beauty salons. The victim was largely unknown, a woman in her early 30s and nowhere near wealthy. I didn't know her, nor did it seem like anyone else in my neighborhood did. She had moved here less than a year before and kept to herself, so she hadn't even been reported missing. Then, just before our summer break came to an end, this lady was found at the base of a steep incline, deep in one of our densely wooded areas, by some folks who were out for a nature hike. There she was, found at the base of a large illegal dump on a winding dirt road that was barely wide enough for a single vehicle. If you met another car, one of you would have to pull over so far, you'd be almost entirely off the road. What adds a layer of creepiness to this? The road's name was Bone Road. When she was found, this poor woman had been decapitated, although both her upper and lower body were recovered. Her killer hadn't been caught. So, my mom was born and raised here and was strong, yet of goofy stock. She's always been my best buddy, even when dropping the hammer on my brother and myself. She was loved by every student that she ever taught in her capacity as a teacher. Our friends adored my goofy mama, often telling me just how lucky I was to have her. My dad was a pharmacist in our area, smarter than most, and happy to go fill a lost or forgotten prescription even late into the night. My dad isn't originally from here, but is very well known because of his job. Everyone knows my mom, because she and most of our huge family have been here since our ancestors settled here in the late 1800s. The rest of her family lived in Middle Tennessee. On that particular day in August, we had been at a family reunion picnic at the beautiful, naturally made lake that we lived near, when suddenly, as it's known to do in the summer here, a scattered thunderstorm popped up and brought our get-together to an abrupt end. It was just me and my mom on the ride home, where she got the wild idea to have us go play Sherlock Holmes and Watson. She wanted to go see the crime scene. I know, brilliant idea, Mom. My dad was at work and my brother was with a friend. Like I said, this was 92 or 93, so no GPS, Alexa, Siri, Google Earth, not even MapQuest. My dad was on our school board and had been given a highly detailed map of our entire county. Since neither of us knew how to reach Bone Road, it was agreed that the map would be our guide. We went home, swooped up the map, and set out like we were Magellan. We eventually found the place and headed to the spot, and being the ignorant rubberneckers we were, we had just planned to drive past this stupid dump site. I can't begin to explain just how creepy this place was. A murder dump in the middle of nowhere, on a road that started with blacktop, transitioned to gravel, and then good old country dirt. It was mid-afternoon, but the sudden rain on the August ground made the area steamy. Listeners who are from the South might know what I mean. Literal steam was emanating from the road, the fields, the woods, everywhere, and this just added to the thrill of our folly. As we approached the location, there was a blind curve making it impossible to see the place until you were right up on it. Once we rounded that corner, we saw that we weren't alone. There was a very dirty man who had his very dirty truck pulled over at the dump site, just far enough to allow us to pass. Now, sure, Joe Dirt could have just been another looky-loo. Like us. But he gave off a creepy AF vibe. Just standing by his truck, looking downward into the dump. It wasn't a sheriff's officer. After all, we knew all our local authorities, and they had cleared the location a day or so before. Now, anyone could access the area. I look out the window as we pass him, and we're so close that I can see his 2 teeth clear as day. Literally, a 2-tooth smile in this uber creeptastic, almost leering sort of way. Not nice, far from friendly. We got past and thanked the Lord that Mr. Two-Tooth hadn't followed us. We agreed we would reach the end of Bone Road and get the hell out of there. Oh, you know there's a but. We reached the end of Bone Road, ending at a field. Bone Road was a dead end, no pun intended. My mom said the words that I had been screaming in my head since we passed that man. Oh, we had no choice. We had to do a 5-point turn and go back the direction that we came from. Oh, I bet he's gone now. That was my mom's feeble attempt to soothe us both. But guess what? He was still there. He was still smiling his huge, sporadically tooth-populated smile. Now, as an adult, I reflected on this. That man could have come after us, knowing that we would have been cornered. And to this day, I'm wondering why he never did. We made it out unscathed, of course, and my father hit the roof when he heard the tapestry of idiocy our afternoon adventure was. It's at this point that we hit our second iteration of but, because you always know there's a but coming. Days later, our newspaper heralded the good news. The murderer had been caught. This woman had been killed by a boyfriend turned stalker. She had moved here from a town about 45 minutes away just to get away from him. But wouldn't you know, he found her. He drove around with her body in his truck before happening upon the dump. Murder solved. Case closed. Happily ever after? Not exactly. As we stared down at this guy's mugshot, it was real. Mr. Two-Tooth was our killer. We never told my dad that part. Eventually, the killer was convicted of first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. He will die in the state prison system, serving life without the possibility of parole. Still, Mom and I promised we would never be so dumb again. We still have weird adventures, but none to freaky, remote murder dump sites on unknown terrain, and with no one knowing where we are. We really could have met our end on that dead-end road. It's an odd thing, knowing that you've been face to face with a brutal murderer. Not once, but twice. I've always heard in TV and from Hollywood that the murderer will occasionally revisit the scene of the crime. I had no idea that was actually a thing though, not just dramatized for my entertainment on Law & Order or some other big-budget movie that I'm watching. When I think about driving down that desolate road that day and coming across a man who had just extinguished the life of someone that he'd cared about, I'm left wondering, what are the odds? If you're anything like me and into true crime shows or channels, you may have heard this story before, or at least the main details. I've seen it covered in several myself. Here's a little background. This event happened nearly 15 years ago. I had just turned 18 and moved to Orange County, California. I moved into an apartment complex near the community college that I was attending, so a bunch of younger people around my age lived there. I didn't know a single person in California, so I would take any opportunity to socialize and meet new people. A big gathering place at the complex was the main pool, where people would drink and relax in the sun. Over the first few months, I would meet a bunch of people while hanging out there. I never got super close to any of them, but I would see these same people several days a week. We would often go back to each other's apartments after the pool to drink or smoke some more. It was a really mellow and fun environment. 3 people I would see all the time were Sarah, Mike, and John. One day after hanging out at the pool, Sarah, my girlfriend, and I went back to my apartment. The 3 of us smoked, and Sarah went back home. Just a typical, regular day. The next day, we all found ourselves at the pool once more, although there were a few of the usual people missing, but still a solid 10 people gathering, so we didn't really notice. We go home later that night, and my girlfriend gets a call from one of our friends. My girlfriend playfully answers her phone, and the expression on her face begins to change. She's just listening, and her eyes get super wide. She blurts out, "What the fuck? Are you serious?" before closing her clamshell phone to hang up. I'm super confused, so I ask her, What? What happened?" She says, "Dude, the police just found Sarah dead in Mike's apartment, and Mike is nowhere to be found." This was absolutely insane. I asked her if the friend said anything else, but she told me it was really hard to understand. We eventually went to bed that night and met up with our usual crowd at the pool the next day, which included John and his fiancée. We're all talking about how unbelievable this was. Sarah was the epitome of sweet, and Mike was easily one of the kindest people that I'd ever met. He was one of the first people that I met when I moved, and he gave my underage ass some beer and told me some awesome stories of his life. These were both good people, and it didn't make any sense. We all kind of started speculating and just did our best to make sense of it. Nobody could get a hold of Mike. We all started to worry if he's safe. Somebody suggested that Mike probably killed Sarah, then panicked and took off. That was a hard pill to swallow for most of us, but it was the only thing that made any bit of sense. John shook his head and said, "Man, just awful." We all dispersed and went our separate ways. It would be the last time that I would see most of these people. Fast forward a month or two. I was hanging out in my apartment one evening when my girlfriend calls me frantically. The first thing out of her mouth is a plea to come to her friend's apartment. The last thing she said was, "You're not going to believe this shit. It's the most f***ed up thing I've ever heard." Needless to say, I rushed over to the apartment where my girlfriend was. She was with two of our mutual friends from the pool. One of them was crying hysterically, while the other sat with him. My girlfriend motioned for me to go outside, and the other friend stayed back to keep consoling the other one. Once we were out of earshot, she told me exactly why her friend was crying so intensely. Her friend had just gotten back from being with the police. He was asked to identify pieces of a dismembered body that were found in the sewer. He was crying because he positively identified the body parts as Mike's. How exactly did the police know they were there? They knew because John had told them. Turns out, John was and still is a broke piece of shit. This bastard was engaged and didn't have enough money for his wedding. Being an organized and well put together person, Mike had a bunch of money saved up. John found out about it and decided to kill Mike and take his money. John was an acting student and asked Mike to help him move some heavy things in the theater. When Mike's back was turned, John shot him. He then took Mike to another location where he dismembered his body and dumped the remains into the sewer. John took Mike's keys and phone and then went back to Mike's apartment. From there, he texted Sarah on Mike's phone asking her to come over because he wanted to talk. Being the sweet and caring person she was, Sarah went over to Mike's apartment without even questioning the situation. When she got there, John snuck up behind her and shot her as well. He left the apartment and framed Mike for Sarah's murder. John was caught because of how big of an idiot he was. He paid some kid to withdraw money from Mike's ATM account. Cops found the kid, and the kid dimed out John. They quickly tracked John down at his own f***ing bachelor party. He was taken in for questioning, where he would later admit that he murdered both Sarah and Mike. Eventually, John was tried, found guilty, and sentenced to death. At the sentencing, Mike's dad spoke to John across the courtroom and said, "My only regret is that the state of California doesn't allow me to kill you myself." Turns out, John's fiancée tried to help him hide evidence, and she was sentenced to time as well. All in all, pretty dark story. Aside from the violence, what messes me up is that this guy had literally just murdered two of our friends, and he was back at the pool commiserating with us. Like, genuinely acting upset, sad, and confused. He's a horrible human, and I hope he suffers for the rest of his life, however long that may be. My deepest and continued condolences go out to the family and friends of the two innocent people that lost their lives far too soon. I just wanted to add a personal note here. This is a validated account of an actual double murder that occurred. While most of the details depicted are accurate in nature, OP originally changed the names of those involved. But for those of you that wish to learn more about the horrific events shared here, this is the case of Daniel Wozniak, who in the summer of 2010 took the lives of his friends Sam Herr and his girlfriend, Julie Kibushi. Wozniak was sentenced in September of 2016 and currently sits on California's death row.